Joining me today is Andru Volinsky, who's running for the Executive Council in District 2 in New Hampshire. Andru, I just want to sort of tie the end on the Claremont decision.
Right.
Is the case you're making is this state's obligation constitutionally to provide an adequate education.
Right.
Does the Executive Council play a role in that at all? Is it limited? Is it how?
It plays an indirect role in that area, as it does in many areas. So the Executive Council is not responsible for tax policy, for example, but the Executive Council has to confirm the person appointed to be Commissioner of Education and the people appointed to be on the State Board of Education. They directly influence education policy in the state. So in that way, there is an influence, but it's indirect.
It's not something that an Executive Council really is going to be able to move the needle on,
No.
except being an advocate.
Yes.
Or raising sort of these issues. And the appointments.
And the appointments, but the role of advocate is an important one. As you may know, the council districts are fairly gerrymandered, with a lot of the Democratic towns being placed in District 2 so that the other districts are Republican-oriented. I think the counselor who holds the District 2 seat has a responsibility to use the bully pulpit. And if elected, I intend to do that.
Would this be one of your main issues? What would be the other ones if that you can't physically vote on, but you can bully pulpit? What would those be?
I think it crosses into something that I do vote on, and that's economic justice issues and getting value for our expenditures and not just being cheap. So you may think we spend too much or too little in state government. Whatever we spend, it's the council's responsibility to spend it wisely, and I expect to spend a lot of time on that. And part of that expenditure is looking out for the contracting with state workers. So part of my current law practice involves representing the public unions. I'll finish doing that before I take office, but I am sensitive and I do understand the impact of pensions in our state. Pensions are good public policy because they allow the state to spend less money currently on salaries and to invest in bulk money for all of its workers. And that has worked well in a number of states. It hasn't worked so well here because the state has raided the pension fund at times. We actually had to adopt a constitutional amendment to prevent that. And the state has used some accounting gimmicks to depress the contribution levels at times. That went on for some 15 years.
The state's contribution level?
The employer's contribution,
Okay.
so state and municipal.
Okay.
So employees have always had a statutorily determined contribution rate. It's clear, it is what it is. The state makes up the so-called difference from the employee's contribution to the actual costs. And the state's played games with how to figure that out.
And that was to balance budgets or to legislative priorities from one biennium to the next?
Yes.
Okay.
And so for 15 years, the employer's contribution was artificially low.
I want to circle back to this notion of value.
Yeah.
And so value and expense. I mean, we can get value by spending a lot, or we can get value by spending a little. Talk to me about sort of that relationship.
I think it's more a matter of spending wisely. So you can fix the roof on your house and keep your costs relatively low, or while you're fixing the roof, you can insulate it at the same time and thereby save energy costs. I want us thinking about the latter opportunity instead of just going as cheap as I can on my watch and putting off to someone else's time the responsibility to insulate the house.
So how will that butt up against the legislature?
The legislature sets the level of appropriations with the governor's budget. And so the council has to spend the money wisely, and I'm going to look for opportunities to do that. I'm also going to ask questions about how the contractors treat their employees. Are they paying their lowest paid workers a living wage? Because if the contractors the state contracts with don't do that, the state in many ways makes that up through food stamps and other kinds of assistance.
Great, and I have to stop you there. Thanks so much for the interview.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Capital Connections, your weekly access to politics and policy along the I-89 and I-91 corridors and how it impacts your life in our region. If you've got a comment or an idea for a future show, please send me an email. And more importantly, please join us again next week for another edition of Capital Connections.